I'm going to continue the sculpture, but the goal, when you get it to the midway, as I have now, what you want to do, and actually what you have to prepare for the finished firing of a sculpture is the hollowing out of the inside. All of this is solid. The figure is solid. There's not that much damage, not much problem with damaging the sculpture for firing this top part, because it's not as dense as it should be. But this block, you could remove a lot of clay from here. And that's how we're going to start. We can start here. Also, a very weak spot is the figure and the base. I've actually had it plop over. Before I had this drapery on, it was very difficult to get the sculpture from holding. So it flopped over twice. And that is one of the weak spots that you're going to find when you're firing the sculpture, is this and the base. So you have to be very careful. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my wire tool. And the tools I like using are these to remove the insides, these little loop tools. In the past, I've just rushed through a lot of these, the hollowing out. You know, it's such a lot of people feel intimidated, but the reason you want to do the hollowing out at this point in the sculpture is that I don't have a lot of details in the sculpture, so you're better off doing it now. That way, when you add more details, you don't have to worry about it. So this part, we could actually remove a doorway. And I'm just going to start doing it like this. Remember, this is also the structure. This is the foundation of the sculpture. This is what's holding the sculpture up. So you don't want to overdo it. There's a very fine line. See, as you're like removing clay, it's starting to get softer. And what's going to happen is when you remove this and you hollow out the entire sculpture, you finish all of that, you're going to see that your sculpture is going to harden much quicker than it was with the dense clay inside. And that's exactly to be expected. And this clay in particular, I have a link in the below where you can get this. You could actually get it from Amazon, but because of the weight of waterclay, you're better off finding like a local place that sells it. So we're just going to cut these little windows into the sculpture. Now this one's kind of important because what you want to do, you want to dig this and you want to make sure that this sculpture is going to have a vent to the base. So you're going to scoop down, get as much clay as possible, and don't rush. You don't have to rush this. I know it looks intimidating to do this, but it's really not that big of a deal. If you guys think there's a demand for live sculpting videos, you know, post up in the comments. And over here, that way you can kind of feel it. You know, I actually feel that my base is kind of sloping a bit, and that is one of the dangers, because when I didn't have this on here, it was kind of sloping. Remember, I don't have an armature, or at least a traditional armature inside here. And, you know, one of the reasons I don't use an armature, it's a whole lot easier to create a finished work that's fired and everything. Because if you have an armature inside, you have to remove it if you're going to do a firing. So you're better off just kind of learning to engineer these things yourself. Keep your clay about an inch thick throughout. It can get thinner and thicker, but the problem is if one is too thin, it could possibly crack. So this clay that I'm removing is really soft. I have not reached that base yet. And we're not done yet. I've done several of these videos where I hollow out the sculptures. but I always get questions about it. The cool thing about this, I haven't decided yet. So if you come to the front, what I might do is actually seal it here. That way I can just kind of come through to the front. That way I'll remove less clay. The drapery itself here doubles as an armature. That's the beauty of having this. So having this, I'll take a measurement. See, I have about 1 inch to the front. I have not reached the bottom. So I'm actually digging all the way to the base. I want to make sure I hit that base. Once I feel it hit, I know that even when it's dry or when I remove it, I'll be able to hollow it out even more. But you want to do it like this. It's a whole lot. There we go. I just hit that base. And I want to get as much as possible to the base because all of this clay we are going to be reusing on future videos. That's the beauty of this water clay. All the clay that you remove is reusable. Scoop up. I want to get right into the figure. Now this might seem intimidating, especially after you've been sculpting for a while. This here, we have a bulk. We have a bulk here, and I know this is intimidating, but look, I'm just going to start scooping just a little bit here. See, like in the back here, and the clay is actually getting kind of hard, so that's good because that's the armature. But you have to be careful. You don't want to dig too much. But I like to sculpt these little windows, carve them out, because I connect them all together. And just look at all the clay that I'm removing. This is a lot of stuff. From the bottom, I'm going to scoop up. In the past, I've been able to fire things without hollowing them out, but you have to fire so slow, it might take days to do. But even then, you don't want your sculpture to be extremely heavy. This thing is heavy. It's a heavy sculpture. So if you remove a lot of this clay, you basically get the clay back, you can sculpt with it again, and to me, it's worth it. So at this point, it's kind of hard to remove that, so I might need a shorter tool. So I'm going to use this, it's a little shorter, just to kind of remove this. So this hole here, I'm going to connect it to this hole. And be very careful not to go to the front. And you don't want to remove too much up here, just because that is serving as the foundation, as the support for this, because there's nothing inside here other than the stick, which eventually we're going to remove. Just look at all the clay that we are removing here. So to the edge, leave about 1 inch of wall because we want it to support, but we do want to dig to the bottom. I'm just doing like little steps, but look at all the clay that we're removing. Okay, I think we're almost at the end here. These little tools are great because they have serrated edges and it grabs the clay. So I do this slowly. I have removed about this much clay from the sculpture and it's connected this window to this one. Now I'm just going to dig a little bit here because I want to remove a little bit of the chest, and then I'm going to connect it to this window. This is going to do a couple of things. So it's going to keep the hollow shape, and at the same time, it's going to decrease a little bit of the top heaviness to the sculpture. If you look over here, there's quite a bit, especially with the drapery, that we can remove to the front. And this clay, just from feel, I can see how hard it's become. So that means that it's going to still create a little bit more of a support. And then I'm going to dig up because I want to see if I can link the head to this as well. So just remove a little bit. Just takes a little bit of time. The more delicate the area, the more time and more careful you have to be in order to get it going. And the hair is creating a support as well, and sometimes you can dig a little bit. You don't have to go too far digging this stuff. The more important part is not to remove too much from the waist, because the waist connecting to the base, you need a little bit more clay. But this top part, we can dig a little bit. Hit that stick right in here. So that's good. We'll be able to pull it out. And if you're wondering, the stick, once you pull it out, it does create a little bit of a hollow. You just have to seal it on the top. You can do it before or after. But once we get it all vented out, it should be easy enough, and you don't have to even seal it, worry about sealing it, because there's going to be a hole going all the way down. I have gotten window 1 connected to window 2. So you just need a little bit of a vent all the way to the base. And now you can dig a little bit more. You don't have to do too much. So one thing I might do is maybe a little bit on the thighs. I haven't decided yet. I could just remove a little bit here, kind of dig to the base. But at the same time, you could actually do it from here and remove a little bit more. If I can dig out just a little bit more, I think that's okay. I want to leave a little bit more here. Now, when it comes to the head, at this point, I'm going to see if I can remove this. There we go. It was stuck on because remember, the clay will firm up. So this stick, we're going to remove it. And I think I will dig just a little bit. And the best thing about this is that there's actually a hollow already. So you can just remove a little bit of the head. I'm digging just a little hole here. And because the head is very independent from the body, this is actually harder clay than the torso, because the denser the clay is, the softer it's going to be, so because there's more clay. But if it's an arm or a foot, it's going to be harder. It's going to be much more dense. I'm just going to remove a bit here towards the shoulders, and now I'm going to put this in here, see where it hits, because it really should. Yeah, I think I'm digging too much to the front. So that's one of the dangers of doing that. That's okay, but I think we have, I'm actually going to take my phone's flashlight, because I want to be able to look inside and see where that tool is. Yeah, that is interesting. I think I see it. Yeah, there we go. It's on there. So it's a little bit hard to see that, but we did manage to hollow out this, and the base. The only things that you might want to consider is maybe if your thigh is a little bit too thick, you can hollow it out going this way. I'm going to pick this part here, and we're just going to make a little window, and I'm going to dig all the way back. We have dug out quite a bit of clay, as you can tell, but we're not done. So we have these holes, and now we have to fix them. There's a couple of things you should use, and we're going to use soft clay that we have in the bag. Say this hole right here, this window. What you're going to be using is a tool with a little teeth to it. This one's just a wire tool. And I'm just going to do this. Just kind of remove a little bit here. And I'm going to spray it down pretty hard. It's going to be really wet. This is actually... And now we're going to take our clay, get it wet, because we want it to seal. And I'm just going to put this. And now I like to use a flat tool like this. And a lot of times when you do this, you don't want to push down too much. Remember, you just created a hole. So you want to just do a little bit on the surface, and we're adding clay. Eventually I'll add more clay because we're not done sculpting. This is just a way of fixing things. And you notice that I'm using a large tool, kind of just going around. It doesn't have to be perfect. And after that is done, we're going to respray it. Because one of the things that happens when you do this technique, if the clay is too hard and the clay you're adding is soft, what happens is sometimes you get a crack around the new clay when you go to fire it. So right now, we're going to look at this arm here. We're going to spray this. Before you seal it, you want to see if there's any more that you want to remove. But I think we'll leave it like that. You can even take like a tool like this and do like little cuts. And these cuts are basically just going to create a little suction. And now we're going to take some clay, just kind of push it. Like that. Spray. Get plenty of water. And then create a little texture. Couple holes. Just kind of cut right into it. Spray. Get it really wet. We want to take our clay. And we're going to push that in. So we're going to let this just dry a bit, and we're going to keep this wet. So right now, this one, seal this up, and if it falls inside, it's fine. Try to use a little bit more clay because you want it to create the same sort of thickness. Because when you push it in, it's going to go right in. We're going to take this amount, put it on top. So we are going to be kind of monitoring this over the couple of days because we might have to get it wet. All of these things, we're going to have to get it nice and wet. And now we're going to seal the big hole here. And for that, we're going to have to get all of this clay. This is all the clay that we removed, which is kind of crazy. Ugh. Okay. And this is completely reusable. You just have to take some time and kind of play around with it, get it nice and wet, because some of this clay is hard, some of it is soft, but it is a lot of clay to remove. That's a lot of clay. What I like to do is kind of bevel it like this. Just create a little bit of a window. Make it nice and flat, because when you add clay it'll be easier. And now let's start by this edge. Just gonna push it in. And once this clay firms up a little bit, we'll be able to completely seal it up and change it. So you don't have to seal it almost completely right away. You can kind of wait until it firms up. So that's pretty much how you hollow out a sculpture. You can see all the holes have been filled in. So the only thing that you have to do is keep it nice and moist for a couple of hours, so the clay joins the old clay. And in the past, when I've done this, there have been, if you put too thin of clay on top, what happens is that it's not gonna dry evenly. You want to have the same thickness throughout. So even here, I only added a little, which means I'm gonna be adding more clay on top, but that's okay because we are still in the process of sculpting. So when that happens, we're adding more clay throughout. And I knew that going into the drapery, we're still adding. And this is the clay that we removed. It's a lot of clay and it's gonna be good. Just keep it nice and wet, put it in a separate container, and that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this hollowing out of this classical sculpture. Hopefully we can finish this timely. It's been quite a bit of time that I had since I had time to work on it. But I'll keep you guys updated. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.